April 23rd, 2005. A blurry 19-second camcorder clip. A 25-year-old guy named Jawed Karim is standing in front of the elephant enclosure at the San Diego Zoo, casually talking about how incredibly long their trunks are. The video is called Me at the Zoo. It's still on YouTube today, and somehow, even after 20 years, people are still leaving new comments underneath it. Back then, nobody could have imagined what that tiny video would eventually become. Fast forward 2 decades, and the platform that started with those 19 seconds now brings in more money every year than Netflix. Not long ago, its parent company officially revealed the numbers for the first time. YouTube alone generates more than $60 billion in annual revenue. And here's the crazy part, it just keeps growing, quarter after quarter, without slowing down, which raises a pretty obvious question if someone asked you right now. What was the greatest year in YouTube history? The year when the platform was at its absolute peak, when it felt the biggest, the most influential, and the most successful. You'd probably say this year, or maybe last year. That would seem like the obvious answer. Except, almost nobody actually says that. Ask 10 people who genuinely grew up watching YouTube, and you'll probably hear 10 completely different answers, and they'll defend those opinions like they're talking about something deeply personal. The early 2010s. No way! Everything went downhill once every single video started getting flooded with ads. Come on, YouTube was still amazing in 2018. But almost nobody says, right now! And that gap, the difference between the year that made YouTube the most money and the year people remember with genuine nostalgia, is what this entire video is about. But before we figure out why that happened, there's one little detail almost everyone forgets. YouTube was almost something completely different. Originally, its founders wanted to build a dating website. The idea was simple. People would upload short videos introducing themselves, then use them to find someone to date. There was just one problem. During the site's first few weeks, not a single person uploaded a dating video. Not one. So the founders quietly abandoned the idea and simply let people upload whatever they wanted. That one decision changed everything. Just a year and a half later, in October 2006, Google bought YouTube for $1.65 billion in stock. At the time, people thought the price was absolutely insane. The company barely made any money. The site was mostly home videos, random clips, and amateur uploads. A lot of people couldn't understand why anyone would spend more than $1 billion on something like that. Nobody imagined that one day, the same platform would be worth well over $500 billion. For the next few years, YouTube stayed pretty much exactly what it had always been. Home videos, re-uploaded TV shows, random internet clips, and a comment section that had already earned a reputation as one of the most toxic places on the internet. Then, the summer of 2012 happened. A South Korean artist named PSY uploaded a song about one of Seoul's neighborhoods, and the entire world completely lost its mind. On December 21st, 2012, Gangnam Style became the first video in history to reach 1 billion views just 159 days after it was uploaded. At its peak, the video was gaining nearly 15 million new views every single day. The internet had never seen anything like it before. Politicians were filming themselves doing the dance. Government officials were copying the choreography in front of cameras. Even members of the US Congress joined in. For a few months, it genuinely felt like the entire internet was watching the exact same video at the exact same time. That was probably one of the last times the internet ever felt that united, and that wasn't a coincidence. If you look at almost any debate about when YouTube's golden age really was, you'll hear all kinds of answers. Some people say 2005 to 2014. Others swear it was 2010 to 2018. Some argue for 2011 through 2016. But almost every timeline overlaps in one place, and it's not in 2012. It's probably the only year that shows up in almost every single conversation, and around that same time, something else was happening, something much quieter. But maybe even more important, YouTube stopped being just a hobby. Let's plays, vlogs, unboxings, reaction videos, clips filmed in a regular bedroom under the glow of a cheap desk lamp. All of it suddenly became more than something people did just for fun. For the first time, you could actually make a living doing it. Creating videos stopped feeling like an impossible dream and started becoming a real career. That was the era when thousands of kids would sprint home after school because their favorite creator always uploaded at exactly 4 o'clock. Some secretly held their phones under the desk just to watch the newest upload before class was even over. Entire friendships started with one simple question: did you watch the new video yet? Previous generations talked about Saturday morning cartoons. The YouTube generation built an entirely different set of shared memories, and that's the version of YouTube people are talking about whenever they say, man, YouTube used to be so much better. They're not nostalgic for the old logo. They're not even nostalgic for the website itself. They're nostalgic for the feeling that their favorite creator had turned on a camera just for them. Not inside a professional studio, not surrounded by an entire production crew, not because another sponsorship needed to be delivered. Then, in March 2017, that feeling ran straight into reality. Journalists discovered that ads from some of the world's biggest companies, including AT&T, Verizon, Walmart, Starbucks, and many others, were automatically appearing next to extremist and highly inappropriate videos. The backlash exploded almost overnight. In less than a week, more than 250 advertisers pulled their campaigns from YouTube. Analysts estimated that Google was risking nearly $750 million in lost advertising revenue. The platform reacted almost immediately. Its monetization rules became dramatically stricter. But there was one major problem. The people who suffered weren't the ones who caused the scandal. Thousands of completely ordinary creators, people who had absolutely nothing to do with any of it, suddenly watched their ad revenue collapse. For some, it dropped by 80% overnight. No warning, no explanation. Sometimes it honestly felt like the algorithm was just picking names out of a hat. That's when a new word spread across the creator community almost instantly: adpocalypse. And honestly, the name fit perfectly, because for a lot of creators, it genuinely felt like the end of the world. At least their little corner of it. The following year, YouTube raised the bar even higher. Now creators needed at least 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours before they could qualify for monetization. For countless small channels, the door to the partner program slammed shut overnight. For Google, though, the crisis barely left a mark. Its financial reports looked almost untouched. But creators walked away with one very clear lesson. From that point on, your audience wasn't the one deciding your future anymore. The algorithms were. The advertisers were. They decided what your work was worth. The viewer's opinion was no longer the thing that mattered most. Then, just a year later, YouTube tried reminding everyone why people had fallen in love with the platform in the first place. Every December, it released YouTube Rewind, a giant year-end video celebrating the platform's biggest creators and defining moments. But Rewind 2018 wasn't what viewers were expecting. Instead of highlighting the creators who actually shaped YouTube that year, the video focused on Will Smith, Fortnite dances, and a long list of moments that many people barely associated with YouTube at all. The outcome was historic. Within just a few days, it became the most disliked video in YouTube history. More than 13 million dislikes. Even Justin Bieber's Baby, which had held that infamous record for years, couldn't compete anymore. But the most interesting part came afterward. YouTube's official response was basically this: "We're happy to see this much engagement. As far as the algorithm is concerned, a dislike isn't all that different from a like." Let's just say, that answer didn't exactly win people over. But by then, one thing had become impossible to ignore. The company running YouTube and the people who had made YouTube what it was almost sounded like they were talking about two completely different platforms. By 2021, TikTok had officially crossed 1 billion monthly active users. Just a few years earlier, plenty of people still dismissed it. Now, ignoring it simply wasn't an option anymore. YouTube didn't have time to be nostalgic. In September 2020, the company rushed out YouTube Shorts, a vertical short-form video format that looks suspiciously similar to the very platform that was rapidly pulling viewers away. Shorts arrived in the United States by March 2021. Just 4 months later, it was available across most of the world. This wasn't the YouTube that set the trends anymore. Now it was the one trying to catch up. Then, in 2023, another major chapter came to an end. After 9 years as CEO, Susan Wojcicki stepped down. During her leadership, YouTube's daily audience had nearly doubled. She was succeeded by Neil Mohan. The irony? Long before becoming CEO, he had already been leading the development of Shorts, the very feature built to fight a competitor YouTube never wanted to acknowledge, but eventually couldn't afford to ignore. And that brings us back to the number we started with. Over the last full fiscal year, YouTube generated more than $60 billion in revenue. More than Netflix. More than almost every entertainment company on earth except Disney. Advertising revenue keeps climbing quarter after quarter, and the platform Google, bought back in 2006 for $1.65 billion, is now estimated to be worth well over $500 billion. If we're judging purely by the numbers, it's not even close. Financially, YouTube has never been more successful than it is today. But that brings us to the real question. So, what actually was the greatest year in YouTube history? If we're talking about money, the answer is obvious. Today's YouTube wins. And honestly, it wins by a mile. If we're talking about the biggest cultural moment, the one time it felt like the entire internet was watching the exact same video together, then it's incredibly hard to beat 2012 and the phenomenon that was Gangnam Style. But if we're trying to find the year when both the platform and its community understood exactly what YouTube was supposed to be, every road leads back. Back before Apocalypse, back before 13 million dislikes on Rewind, back before Shorts ever needed to exist. Because that's where the real answer is hiding. Around 2017, YouTube the business and YouTube the culture stopped telling the same story. The company kept growing, its stock kept climbing, revenue kept breaking records, but the version of YouTube that millions of people had fallen in love with slowly started fading away. And those two statements don't contradict each other. In fact, they're both true. If you had to choose just one year to engrave on a plaque that read, "The best year of YouTube," it would probably be 2012. Not because it made the most money. Later years left it far behind. Not even because it had the most views, but because it's the year that keeps coming back in almost every conversation about YouTube's golden age. Think about what this platform has really been over the last 20 years. It was a kid pretending to be sick just to stay home and watch the newest Let's Play. It was a group chat that never stopped lighting up with one message: "The new video's out." It was a tiny bedroom with terrible lighting that somehow became someone's full-time career. And years later, it became a conference room where people in expensive suits decided what that career was worth to advertisers. It was 13 million people hitting the dislike button on a 2-minute video simply because they wanted to make a point. It was a Korean pop song that somehow got the entire planet dancing the exact same way for months. None of those moments show up in a financial report. On paper, there's only one number. $60 billion. 20 years after two friends uploaded a blurry 19-second video in front of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo, YouTube is making more money than ever before. But for millions of people who grew up alongside the platform, it hasn't really felt like the same YouTube for a long time, and maybe that's the whole point.